All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So our objective for today is that students will be able to create a table, equation, and a graph to model an exponential relationship, okay? So you remember last week, we did an example where you were cutting paper, counting up how many strips you had, and then on Friday, we started looking at scientific notation, okay? So today we're gonna look at another example similar to what we saw on Thursday, try to model that out with the table, then a graph, and then an equation, right? If you can't quite get to the equation today, that still seems difficult, don't worry about it. That's usually gonna be the harder part of math, right? And we're still early in the unit, so if it doesn't make quite too much sense yet, it's gonna make more sense as we go on and on, okay? So the scenario for today, it says, one day in the ancient kingdom of Akarama, a peasant saved the life of the king's son. The king was so grateful, he told the peasant she could have any reward she desired. The peasant was the kingdom's chess champion, and she made an unusual request, okay? So she didn't just say, okay, so give me $1 million, right? People who play chess typically are good at solving problems. They just have a different way of thinking about things, okay? So what the peasant told the king, the plan is written right here, okay? It says, I would like you to place 1 penny on the first square of my chessboard, 2 pennies on the second square, 4 on the third square, 8 on the fourth square, and so on. Continue this pattern until you have covered all 64 squares. Each square should have twice as many pennies as the previous square. Okay, so this is something that makes a little bit more sense if you have an example. So I have a chessboard here, right? The peasant is saying to take the chessboard. On the first square, we're only gonna put 1 penny, right? This really isn't worth anything, 1 penny, right? If you saw a penny on the floor, you might not even stop to pick it up. And then on the second square, we're gonna put 2 pennies. Again, not a lot of money. The next square, we're gonna double what we had before. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pennies, stack them on top. Now, this pattern is gonna continue until the entire chessboard is filled with pennies, right? So that is the peasant's plan, right? Now, rightfully so, the king sees the peasant's plan and he thinks to himself that pennies are the least valuable coin in the kingdom. Again, if you saw a penny on the floor, you probably wouldn't go out of your way to stop and pick it up. He says, surely you can think of a better reward, but the peasant insisted, so the king agreed to her request, okay? So before we get started with analyzing this, I want you to first think about what the peasant's plan was, right? Do you think that this was a wise choice? And in the end, after every single square is covered, how much money do you think the peasant is actually gonna walk away with? Again, it's only pennies. So is it possible that's gonna be a lot of money, all right? So you're gonna type in what you think in that space below, right? Now, afterwards, you're gonna go to the next page and you are going to fill out this table here, right? So this table is gonna be similar to what we did on Thursday, right? We did with cutting paper. So square number 1, how many pennies go on the first square? Square number 2, how many pennies go on the second square? You're gonna do this all the way up to the first 10 squares, okay? I am not gonna help you by telling you what to start with because on the previous page, if you read through the text, it tells you exactly how many pennies you need to start with, okay? So if you're not sure, reread this just to get it straight. Then, once you have your table, you're gonna click on this link here and go back to that graphing tool that we used last Thursday. Again, we're gonna be using this tool here a lot throughout the course, okay? So I really wanna make sure that you guys are practicing with it. You're using it to make your graphs because that's the only way I'm gonna be able to see the graphs that you make and that you guys are gonna be able to visualize the tables that you make, okay? At this point, I just wanna go ahead and give you the video code password for the Zoom session for today, right? We're talking about stacking pennies on a chessboard. So the Zoom password for today, assuming that we can have Zoom, if it's not canceled because of the chancellor, is going to be penny, okay? Again, the password for today's Zoom session, if we have a Zoom session, will be penny, all right? So you've got your table, you've got your graph. Next thing that you are going to try and figure out is what is an equation that's gonna model this relationship, okay? I'm gonna help get you started on this one here because again, it's only the second time we're coming up with an equation and it might sound difficult. So just to remind you, remember, this is a table that we got last time when we talked about the paper. So we realized last time, okay, so it was 2 for 1 cut, 4 for 2 cuts, 8 for 3 cuts, etc. Right? And remember, I said we can go over here and look at how many times we're multiplying the 2. And I told you guys it was actually going to be 2 raised to however many cuts we have, right? So if you made 9 cuts, it'd be 2 to the power of 9. If you made 10 cuts, 2 to the power of 10. So if you make x cuts, it's 2 to the power of x, right? Now, our equation for today is going to be similar to that, but it's a little bit different. So I want you to try to figure out what the equation would be for yourself. Type in what you think here, but it's going to be similar, not the same thing, to that last equation that we saw, all right? I'm going to discuss it during the Zoom session, so write what you think, and then we'll discuss it then, right? After you're done with that, what you are going to do is to answer the questions that you see below in part 2 and in part 3, right? This is really taking a look at your table, your graph, your equation, and trying to see what can come from that, okay? So I'm gonna leave you here. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or ask me during the Zoom session, all right? Good luck.